Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tat Padam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Chapita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vedya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. Jai Om. Yata sarvani bhutani pratibhanti stithani cha yatraivo bhashamam yanti tasmai satyatmane namaha. So, Mark, where are we? Second chapter.
Number 33.
And if I remember, we finished the story of Shuka, and Vishwamitra has said to Vasishtha, go ahead and enlighten the boy. So, Ganesh, will you help us out this evening?
Yeah. Let me just go grab my book 1 second.
All right.
Okay, Mark,
What page, Mark?
I don't, 19, page 19.
19.
19. Okay, and verse 33.
Correct.
Sasrishtva sakalam sargam nanandya sana sankulam jagama karunam ishaha putra dukkha pitha yatha. He, Brahma, the God, having produced the entire creation filled with manifold evils, was moved by compassion, just as a father by the sorrow of his son.
So here we're talking about the mythology of creation. So Brahma, the creator, creates the world and all that we have in it, what we perceive as good and bad. And here we'll go further into the deeper teaching behind this. But he says that Brahma, the creator, is moved with compassion. Let's see what he does with this compassion. Going on.
Tapodanam japastirtham natyantam dukhashantaye tattavat dukhamokshartham jnanam prakatayamyaham. Austerity, charity, repetition of sacred words in holy places do not bring complete cessation of sorrow. I therefore reveal the knowledge for achieving freedom from sorrow.
So Brahma, the creator, has given us through the Vedas and through the other sacred religions in the world methodologies for alleviating our suffering. But unfortunately, It's never permanent. So here the story is now Brahma, the creator, is going to also give us a means of knowledge to permanently remove our suffering. Oh, this is exciting stuff. See what it means. What's implied there is this. The Sanatana Dharma, the eternal spiritual path, is as ancient as human beings themselves. We have these great lineages, the Guru Shishya Parampara, where this knowledge is passed on from teacher to student, but it's lost in the annals of ancient history. But it's part of who we are as human beings, that we do have this sacred knowledge. Going on, let's see what happens.
Iti sanchitya srishtva mam manasa proktavanasau gaccha bharatavarsham tvam lokanugraha hetuna. Thus contemplating and creating me by his mind, he said, you go to the land of Bharata with the object of favoring the world.
So here, Brahma, the creator, creates Vasishtha by his mind and says, go to the land of India, go to Bharata and do the deed. So also, that same Brahma, the creator, places in each one of our hearts the desire to become one with the infinite. Subhaj, auspicious desire, auspicious wish. My favorite expression of this comes from Saint Augustine of Hippo, who says, thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee. This divine discontent. And then a guru will show up to hand us the tools. We have to do the work. The guru will hand us the tools. So there's always a Vasishtha in our lives when we need one. Going on.
Tatra kriya kanda paraha tvaya putra mahadhiyah upadeshya kriya kanda kramena kramashalina. There, in the land of Bharata, son, the wise ones who consider the ritualistic portion of the scriptures as the highest should be taught by you, endowed with the requisite grasp in the regular course of ritualistic actions.
So what he's saying, those of us who think that ritual or religion is the highest form, then Vasishtha shows up in some form as a Swamiji, as a Ramana Maharshi, to say, this is good. You have now purified your head and heart. Now you're ready for the deeper wisdom. Going on. By the way, you don't need to do the ritualistic portion. You may have done it in another life. If you are drawn to this work and you're grasping it, you're ready for it. Going on, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ganesh.
Viraktastu mahaprajñāः jnānenan jnānenānandadāyinā iti tena na yuktoham tisthami bhuvanasthale. But the extremely wise ones who are free from passion should be taught by that knowledge which is the giver of happiness. Thus directed by him, I remain in the field of this world.
So Vasishtha remains in the world even though he has no desires, with only one job: to pass this teaching on to those who are ready for it. We have nothing that the teacher wants. Not a transactional relationship. You can't write a big enough check to get self-realization. And if you have nothing, you're not left out. If the student is ready, the teacher will pour out the knowledge. Just like water flows from a higher level to a lower. It's part of the natural order of things. So the spirit of Vasishtha shows up as Guru. And the student is ready, the Guru appears. Going on.
Moksha Dwarapalakaha, guardians of the entrance to liberation. Moksha Dware Dwarapalaha, Chatvara Parikirtitaha, Shamo Vichara Santosha, Chaturtha Sadhu Sangamaha. In the gateway to liberation, it is declared there are 4 doorkeepers. They are tranquility, inquiry, contentment, and the 4th, association with the virtuous people or sages.
So, in the old-timey days, when Vedanta got corrupted, it was deemed to be only the purview of the priest class and only for women. So if you were not a Brahmin and if you were not male, you couldn't have it. In fact, when Swamiji came out of the Himalayas and began to teach, he had death threats from the priest class. How dare you teach Vedanta in the tongue of the foreign devils, and even worse, take it to the marketplace. Swamiji said, English is the language of the young, educated Indians, who are the future leaders of the country. They're the ones who need it the most. And we don't need to have doorkeepers because the Vedanta itself has doorkeepers. And he enumerates here, Vasishtha, 4 things. Tests. We must satisfy these tests in order to enter. So let's go through them again. What's the first one, please, Ganesh? Santosha, was it?
It's actually Shama Vicharaha, tranquility.
Shama Vichara. So Shama, tranquility, and there he says also inquiry.
There's tranquility and inquiry, contentment, and the 4th is association with the virtuous people.
Okay, so the first one, Shama, tranquility. You need to have a peaceful mind such that it's not agitated by the presence or the objects of the world. Second one is vichara.
Yeah.
So the capacity to have appropriate inquiry. It's not about whether you're fasting. Fasting is good. It's not going to lead you to God. It's not about whether you're a vegan or a vegetarian. It's inquiry. Who am I? What is this world? How has it come about? And the third one?
Santosha.
Contentment. Oh, yes. So another way to frame this is acceptance. To accept life on life's terms without the compulsion to have to change things in order to be at peace. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. And if I'm upset or disturbed, it's because I find some fact of life unacceptable, some person, place, thing, or situation. And I will not begin to have peace or be able to effectively move through the world until I can accept life on life's terms. Acceptance is the acknowledgement, the fact. This is what it is in the world. And then the fourth one, if I remember, was sadhu sangha. Is that right, Ganesh?
Yeah, sadhu sangama.
Yes, association with the wise. We want to avoid dusanga, lower companions. Hang out with people who support our spiritual life. And then if we're lucky to have the great punya, the great merit, to come in contact with a woman or a man of wisdom who can take us down the path quickly and efficiently. These are the four doorkeepers. If we don't have those, we don't get in. The door is blocked. So here in the language of poetry, Vasishtha is saying in another frame, adhikari, becoming a fit student. These are the things we need to have. Next verse.
Ete sevya prayatnena chatvaro dvau trayothava ekam va sarvayatnena sarvam utsrijya samshrayet. These should be employed with perseverance, all the four, three, or two of them, or else let one have recourse to one at least of the four, with full effort, abandoning everything else.
So, some of us are great yogis with discipline and we can practice all four of them. Some of us are B+ yogis. We can manage 3 of them. Some of us, not so good. We're C students. We can only do 2 of them. Some of them are like me, crappy yogis. Can we hang on to just one of them? We can hang on to one of these, but engage with it fully. The fruits of all four come to us. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
एकस्मिन् वशगे यान्ति चत्वारोऽपि वशं यतः येषाम् एकतमासक्त्या मोक्षद्वारे प्रवेश्यते. Because even if one of them comes under control, all the four become obedient. By attachment to one of these, one is ushered into the gate of liberation.
Yes, yes. So whichever one of these calls to you, hang on. If you can cultivate more than one, it's even better. But as I just said, if you master one of them, the others will get the benefits from them. Going on.
यानि दुःखानि या तृष्णा दुस्सहाये दुराधयः तत्सर्वं शान्तचेतस्सु तमोर्केष्विव नश्यति. All difficulties, desire, and unbearable mental agony perish in peaceful hearts, just as darkness in rays of light.
So as we acquire these qualities, these four qualities of head and heart, what you will find is the afflictions of your life will fade away when we begin to solve the spiritual problem. We straighten out physically and mentally. Life starts to right itself, because most of our problems in life are frankly of our own making. My fear, my selfishness, my control issues, my expectations, my resentments, my regrets for the past, my projections into the future, my need for validation, my need for approval, my jealousy, my envy, all of that's the stuff that makes my life difficult. And by cultivating these qualities, in time, that stuff starts to go away. You turn around and all of a sudden, well, my life's pretty good. So a yogi wants to put her life, in the background. You're not hassled by the stuff of life. You do your duty, and then focus on your side. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
न रसायनपानेन न लक्ष्म्या लिङ्गनेन च तथा सुखमवाप्नोति शमेनान्तर्यथा मनः. Not by drinking the elixir of life and not by the embrace of the goddess of wealth does the mind attain a happiness as it does by quietude within.
Yes. So the ego mind says, more, better, different. Let me get high. Let me get more money. Let me get more thrills. More stuff. This is all just trinkets and baubles. The pearl of great price is peace of mind. So many of our chants, we chant Shanti, Shanti, Shanti at the end. Peace from any external problems. Peace from any afflictions in my body. Most importantly, peace of mind. If we don't have that, then life becomes like a person at a banquet with a thorn in their throat. You can be on a cruise, going to a fabulous concert, having a super job, but if your mind is not at peace, you can't enjoy it. You can't enjoy it. Next verse.
Tapasvishu brahmugneshu yajakeshu nrupeshu cha balavatsu grinadhyeshu shamavane varajate. It is only the one endowed with tranquility that shines among ascetics, people possessed of great knowledge, men who do sacrifices, kings, the strong, and those rich in virtues.
So you can be a great ascetic and go days and days of fasting. You can keep silent maunam. You can lie on a bed of nails. You can do lots of pranayama. Or in the world, you can be rich. You can have lots and lots of letters after your name. This is nothing. If we don't have peace, we don't have tranquility. And if you have that, then the presence or absence of worldly things is not a big deal anymore. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Vicharat tikshnatamethya dhi pashyati parampadam dirgha sansara rogasya vicharo hi mahaushadham. By inquiry or reflection, the intellect, having become sharp, perceives the supreme state. Indeed, inquiry or reflection is the great medicine for the prolonged disease of worldly existence. Note, the inquiry or investigation referred to here does not relate to the objective world and its phenomena, as the following verses will show. It is a radical reversal of human consciousness, leading to the discovery of the source of one's being.
Yes. So the root, vich, means to winnow, to separate the wheat from the chaff. So the primary investigation is koham, who am I? We want to separate what I'm not from what I am. Many times you've heard me talk about the radical reversal of the attentive faculty. I got it. I'm very unoriginal. So the mind's attentive faculty, which is normally outwardly directed, we're habituated to look at things. In fact, the Upanishad says the Lord created the senses with outgoing tendencies. Here we mean the mind, essentially. The psychotherapist says, look within. And they mean look at your thoughts and feelings. To a yogi, that's still looking out. We want to find out who is doing the looking. This is called Atma Vichara. Investigation or inquiry into the nature of the self. This is our primary meditative practice in Jnana Yoga. This is the most direct path to the infinite. Vicharena, by means of vichara. Any thoughts? Next verse.
Koham kasya cha samsarah ityapajyapi dhimata chintaniyam prayatnena sapratikara mahatmana. Who am I? Who is this worldly? Whose is this worldly existence? Thus should be pondered over by the wise with perseverance, even in adversity.
Yes. So we not only do this inquiry in our meditative seat, that's the place we start, but we take on this practice, koham, who am I? Or if you're from Tamil Nadu, namyar. As I'm going through the world, I get upset. To whom does this feeling occur? To me. Who am I? Turn away from the upset emotion. Keep pointing back to the self. We want to take on what we call Sakshi Bhava, the attitude of the witness. I am not the body. I am not the energy. I am not the feelings. I am not the thoughts. I am not the various ideas of self. I'm the witnessing consciousness by which all that is known. We practice it all through the day if we can. Any thoughts on this?
Jim,
Next verse. Oh, wait, please go ahead, Shweta.
Yeah, it's not so much a question as much as I'd like to hear your thoughts more on this topic. One of the things I remember seeing a few years ago is one of the space shuttles. It was in an exhibit. And I remember just my jaw dropping open that, this sort of phenomenal thing, which it can leave Earth, escape gravity, go outside, all those things. And I think that when this Vedantic idea of placing the emphasis on I, who am I? I feel that one of the difficulties I have with that is to think that I am still more essential than, something like this space shuttle. It seems to me at an emotional level that the space shuttle is something so magnificent that it's much more important than whatever I may be. So
And
this is a challenge which I face, which I would like to hear your thoughts on.
the problem is, what do you mean by I? The whole premise of your question is rooted in the supposition, the unexamined supposition that I'm a person, that I'm a body. I'm this little person who's born and lives a short time and dies. Of course, the space shuttle and the magnificence of the universe is much bigger and greater. Of course, the problems of global warming and
Right.
climate change are much greater than Jim. But what the scripture is talking about is something other than that. That is a phony self. It's not who we really are. So
Yes.
let's go back to our basic Vedantic teaching that's found in the 4 Mahavakyas, the great utterances from the Upanishads. So beyond the shuttle, beyond space, what is God? What is the ultimate reality? And the Upanishads say Prajnanam Dhamma. Brahman, ultimate reality is consciousness. That's the ground of being of everything. In Gita, Krishna says, in one tiny corner of my infinite being is the whole manifest universe. So this Brahman is really big. That's what it means, the root. So how do I find it? This Brahman is not only transcendental, beyond the beyond the beyond. You know, when they sent off the Voyager spacecraft, it's now finally left the solar system. In a billion years, no matter how far it travels, it still will not reach God. God is transcendental. But God is also immanent. It pervades the entire manifest world, which means it pervades you and me. So what about me is birthless, changeless, deathless, immutable, that is of the nature of pure consciousness, Satchidananda, pure existence, pure consciousness. And no sorrow reaches there. Let's translate Ananda there. What the Upanishad says is, I am Atma, Brahma. When you find out who you really are, this self is Brahman, not our stupid little ego. This is not about narcissism. So, for example, you, Shweta, see the world from your viewpoint. I, Jim, see it from mine. You are aware of your body. I'm aware of my body. You are aware of your thoughts and feelings. I'm aware of my thoughts and feelings. But in a moment of silence, in the space between your thoughts, having what Vasishtha just said in the prior verse, this radical reversal of our attention. Who am I? What you find is there's nothing there. Yet that no thing shines as pure awareness, pure being. something fundamentally different than the ego. And the self in me is not like the self in you, Shweta. The self in me is the self in you. That's greater than the space shuttle. Is that making sense?
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
It's an excellent question. Excellent question.
You're absolutely right that the root cause of this error is this identification with the little self.
And that's the root cause of all my problems.
Right.
Welcome to the human condition.
I've
It's
been
not just-
around for a while.
Yes, yes. But the idea is, I'm upset. They were mean to me. Okay, who feels the upset? Well, that's just the mind. I'm not the upset feeling. Who knows it? I do. Who thinks he's upset? Jim. Can you find a Jim? No, I can't find a Jim. All I can find is thoughts, feelings, perceptions. And I illumine them. When you realize the self in you, you will realize the self in everybody.
Sounds amazing.
I'm not making this up. That's exactly what the scriptures say. Don't believe me. And don't even believe the scripture. You find out. Maybe it's all just superstition. When Swamiji went up to the Himalayas, he was an atheist. He says to Swami Shivananda, all these gods and things like that, and the puja and the smuja and the yajna and the shmagya, all of it's superstition. And Swami Shivananda says, you're right. But there is a truth behind it all. That's real. So when the scriptures talk about the self, we have to be very careful to see what they mean contextually. Usually when they're translated into English, it's small s for the jiva, the ego, and large S for Paramatma. That's the subtlest of all distinctions when we talked about discriminating. It's pretty easy to do gross discrimination. We can all look at the water glass. I am the one who knows the water glass. You're not a water glass. You're the person looking at it. Well, that's pretty obvious. But to be able to discriminate between the self and the ego sense, oh, that's very subtle. All right, next verse.
It's 46, right?
Don't ask me, I can't read.
Okay. Koham kathamayam doshah samsarakhya upagatah nyaye naivam paramarsho vichara iti kathyate. Who am I? How was this defect called worldly existence attained? Logical reflection such as this is declared as inquiry.
And you know, he heard your question, Shweta, and he answered it in the next verse.
Yes.
How is this dosha, this defect of worldly existence? What do we mean by worldly existence? I think I'm a person with breath in my nostrils. And there's a world of name and form separate from me. It's out there. And I want something. I have this discontent. I'm restless, discontent. And we have so many names for it. The most common is kama, usually translated as desire. I prefer to translate it as craving. We have spriha, longing. Another great one, vancha, wanting. And this craving, this longing, this wanting only takes one of two forms. I either need to fix the world or I need to fix me. That is worldly existence. We're not talking about, oh, how did Brahmaji create the world and why did he do it? It's so defective. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a deep spiritual ignorance. Like the dream. When I have a dream body with a dream ego identified with it. And then there's dream problems out there. But when I wake up, I see, oh, it's just something my mind created. So also, worldly existence with those three elements. I feel like a person, Jiva Bhavana. There's a world of name and form separate from me. And then the mind posits a goal of some sort, and I have struggle. I need to go from point A to point B in order to be happy. How did that happen? Where did it come from and how do I get out of it? That's the inquiry. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Santushta paramabhyeti vishramam sukhalakshanam santoshamritapanena yashanta triptimagatah. The contented one approaches the supreme beatitude, which is of the nature of tranquility and happiness. Whoever is calm by drinking the nectar of contentment, he has reached satisfaction.
So what he's doing, if you haven't figured this out, is he's going into depth on these four guardians of the halls of truth. So contentment, being able to be in the now without the compulsion to have to change things. In Gita, we describe this as yoga rudha, mounting the steed of the mind. It's a term he uses in the second chapter. How do we get contentment? Or what are its qualities? It's when I'm willing for the situation to be the way it is for the rest of eternity. So you've got an annoying boss. You've got some problem with the landlord. You've got a relative who gets drunk. Santosha is You have to emotionally come to the place. What if it never changes? So we disconnect our serenity from the external circumstances. We also have to be willing to not have anything for the rest of eternity. Oh, Jim, I really want to get married. I really want a husband. I really want a wife. Well, if you come into relationships from a hysterically needy place, and you don't want a relationship, you want to take a hostage, chances are you're going to drive people away. You have to be content to be alone before you're peaceful enough to really love somebody else. Paradoxical. And one of the big ones that most of us have, we think we can change other people, and that's our job in life. Young couples all the time, oh, he's the perfect husband for me. I can't wait till we get married and then I can fix him. Any of you who've been married more than a decade, how's that worked out? Have you fixed your husband or wife yet? We can't change other people or children. They're not extensions of our egos. We can guide them when they're young, but very quickly, it's very clear they become their own person. We can do our best, but eventually they must go out and make their own mistakes, just as we did. You don't like your department chair or your boss. Isn't going to do any good to try to change them. Now, that doesn't mean that on some situations the yogi may take the risk to speak truth to power, to stand up for justice. I'm thinking of all these people, the whistleblowers at Facebook. Have they left the company?
Yes.
These people? Okay. And if they hadn't left the company, they'd probably get fired, right?
Probably.
Yeah. But being willing to speak truth to power, that's important. That's important. Can you risk losing your job? I'm thinking of the captain of the Navy ship in the early days of COVID, who went above his chain of command to say, I've got a COVID outbreak on my ship that needs to be taken care of. He lost his commission over it. He ended up retiring because he went outside the chain of command. But justice was more important. Taking care of his sailors was more important than his career. That's a different kind of story. And that's one thing a yogi endeavors to do, is to live life fearlessly. But that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to really be able to change anything. You have to be at peace. My friend Vilasini said, do your best, let go of the rest. That's all we can do. So this idea of contentment. It doesn't mean we don't strive to get a promotion at work, ask for a raise, let go. It's very different than, if I don't get a promotion, I'm just going to be wrecked. Or, I haven't had a raise, I'm going to kill myself. That's nuts. Or if my political candidate doesn't win. Any questions about Santosha? Anybody have anything to add? We also have to have that same kind of acceptance with many of our own character defects. I'm an old man, 73, going to be 74 next year. I tell you, I have so many of the same character defects I had at 17. They don't afflict me, and even more importantly, they don't afflict other people nearly to the degree that they used to. We also have to have the compassion for our own minds and intellects. When we work on a klesha, an affliction, a dosha, a defect, we may turn the volume level down. So we don't want to have unrealistic perfectionism on our own side. Any thoughts on this? And again, if you're not sure whether or not you are having character defects, your spouse will let you know. Next verse.
Aprapta vanchamutsrijya samprapte samatam gatah adrishta kheda khedoya santushta sa ihochyate. He is called a contented man here, who does not feel dejection or its opposite, having abandoned the wish not obtained and remaining equable in that acquired.
Yes. So here he defines what Santosha is. So you're fine with whatever comes your way. You're not agitated if you're not getting enough. Content. Content. Your mind is not moved or afflicted. What's the expression the young people have? FOMO, is that right? Yeah. Fear of missing out. That's the opposite of Santosha. Oh, I'm missing out on life. When I was a kid, they talked about keeping up with the Joneses. I have no idea who the Joneses were. You wanted to have a house as good or better than the neighbors, a car that's as good as better than the neighbors. You want to make sure you're wearing the most stylish stuff, even if you couldn't afford it. You weren't content with what you had. Very American mind state. Yoga says no. Santosha. Be content.
Jim, I'd like to add something here.
Please.
What you said just now about the very American mindset, I think that well, this is my own opinion. It could be false, but I feel that the Indian mindset is sort of the opposite in not the best way. So I think that we mistake contentment or santosha for not really applying ourselves to anything. We don't put ourselves out on the line and then we say it's because we're content with what we have.
Well, the question is, are people really content? Or is it what I call sour grapes renunciation? You know the Aesop's fable?
Yes.
Yes. So for those of you who may not know, the fox is going along the path and he sees some grapes dangling from the arbor and he jumps up because he wants the grapes and he can't reach them. So then he goes down the path and he says, they were probably sour anyway. That's not santosha. That's not renunciation. That's sour grapes. So if we stay where we are because we have an inherent belief that we cannot achieve, that's not santosha. You're absolutely right. And the solution for many people like that is go home and get drunk.
Well, since I'm a teacher here, I feel that with students, I feel like, they need to be more ambitious, if anything, like kind of think of the next big discoveries, imagine themselves as leaders in their field. I feel that they're just sort of settling for, I don't know, very, very easily attainable things. And the cultural context is that we don't want more, we're content. So I feel that this is a problem that we have here.
I think there's a lot of validity to it. So we have to always take these teachings with some nuance. But for example, I have a young lady who's a sometime student, and she really wants to be a neurosurgeon. And I can't remember, what's the test that you have to take to get into med school?
MCAT.
MCAT, yes. So she's taking it 2 or 3 times, and she's not passed it. And she's totally wrecked. Now, I don't know what she's not doing. Is she not taking the right kinds of training courses? Getting these preparatory courses? Is she trying to study all by herself? But maybe she simply doesn't have the aptitude. I don't know. But I don't know if there's a limit to how many times you can take the MCAT. If there is, she may need to be content with finding another profession. It will do no good. If only. Or another real live example. I have a student who, when he was very young, he was in the Navy. And he was an air traffic controller on an American aircraft carrier. He loved being an air traffic controller on the aircraft. And at some point, he wanted to get out of the Navy and work for the FAA as an air traffic controller. Well, he went out with some friends who said, try this drug. It was MDMA, they call it ecstasy. And for the first time in his career, he got back to the ship and they did a urine test. He was discharged from the Navy. And he could never be an air traffic controller. Gone. Now, he has a good career now. But one of the things he had to do was be content with the fact that he made a mistake that had consequences that he didn't expect. Those things happen in life. So there's nuance to it all. There's nuance to it all. But Shweta, I would trust your intuition. If you think these kids are not living up to their full potential, maybe they're not yet ready. Maybe they're in this state which we would call tamas, where everything is shut down. In America, you find a lot of people are in that state if they work for the government. We used to jokingly say, you know, how a government worker is like a broken rifle, it won't work and you can't fire it. So what you want to do then is encourage these people to develop some passion.
Yeah, right.
Then after you've gone through from tamas into rajas, then you start to practice mature santosha, which is a sattvic quality. So you've got to be, if you're in the role of teacher or mentor, you've got to have the intuition to be able to meet each student where they are spiritually and make sure you give them the right instruction for where they are. Give you another real life example. So I was working with a young man, and he happened to be someone I met through recovery communities. And he had a job as an administrator in a small academic environment and making really crappy money, living at home with his mother, and he was just shut down. So I asked him, if you were independently wealthy and you had all the contacts and all the training that you wanted, what would you be doing with your life? And he said, I'd sing. So I said, well, why the hell aren't you? So he's taken the very definite steps to leave being an administrator in academia and being an artist. And what's interesting is he's making at least twice, maybe 3 times as much money as he ever made as, you know, working in the admissions office in a tiny school at a job that bored him to death. So that's moving from tamas to rajas. But this quality of santosha is when we move to a higher level of understanding. Very good point. Thank you for bringing it up. How are we doing on time? All right, let's try one more and it's 9 o'clock. We'll quit here. What verse are we on for next week?
49.
49?
Yeah.
Jim, could I ask a question? Oh.
Did you have another question?
I did. Do you want to do after the chanting though?
Okay, then we can talk offline afterward.
Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. All right, Fang, what's your question?
My question was around what if, for example, just in a hypothetical case, you're doing good karma yoga, you're doing something in a sacrificial manner, you know, for, let's say, a selfless cause. Let's say you're raising money to save a bunch of people, right? And let's say, for example, you do your best and you don't get to the end goal. And of course, the fruits of labor is really not up to you. However, aren't you allowed to sort of feel frustration or sadness because maybe people are not being saved because you couldn't raise that money? So in that way, your mind is not content, right? Because it seems a little bit odd that, like, shouldn't we allow for human emotions to come into this as well?
Well, that's up to you. You're allowed to do anything you want as a yogi. This is not a moral teaching in that sense. Knock yourself out. If you want to feel miserable, go right ahead.
I suppose what I mean is, to me, it would seem odd if you work really hard to help other people and you try your best and yet it doesn't work. It seems odd that the scripture just says, well, peace of mind is still what you, I don't want to use the word should, because I'm not talking about in a moralistic sense. I guess what I mean is, I suppose it seems like there's something that feels off about not feeling any dejection when you try your best to help other people and it doesn't work.
Well, let me share with you out of my own direct experience. I work a lot with alcoholics and drug addicts. It's one of the major things the Lord wants me to do.
Mm-hmm.
If I got all emotionally involved and wrecked and disappointed when they went out and relapsed, I'd be ineffective. And when I see people who try sponsorship and they get attached to the result, it's so painful they quit doing it.
Mm.
And people say, Jim, how many sponsees do you have? Oh, somewhere between 9, 10, 11, So the guy calls me up. And I'm not sure this is for me. I'm not sure this is a good fit. Okay, no problem. God bless you. And I let him go. I'm working with another guy. Been working with him on and off for 10 years. Terrible relapse on crystal meth, and he's no kid. I make suggestions, which he doesn't take. You can tell when someone's an addict, but you can't tell them much. But I can't get all wrecked over this. They're in God's hands, not mine. I'm not that powerful. And that gives me peace, which makes me effective in working with the next person.
I feel like, and hopefully this is not sort of cutting hairs here, but I agree with you that emphatic distress is not going to be helpful to anyone, because then you run away, because then you can't take the emotional distress, right? But what I wonder about is, do you not feel sadness though when something like that happens?
Of course I'm sad.
But yet there's
sad.
But yet there's still peace of mind even when you're sad.
Absolutely, I'm fine.
So you kind of just witness the sadness and you just kind of stay with it.
I'm powerless, sweetheart. I'm powerless. All I can ever do is hand people tools. I can't save them. I can't save anybody.
Okay.
And that's, for me, the value of being right-sized. I'm a crappy yogi who tries to take care of the Dharma and hand the tools to people. They got to do their yoga. I don't micromanage people's lives. They ask me, what should I do about this, that, and the other thing? I give them the best suggestion I can. Half the time they don't take my advice, believe me. Or more than half the time, probably 75%, they don't take my advice. All right.
I guess the thing that I suppose I'm trying to figure out for myself is the peace of mind, even when there's great sadness. Could you talk a little bit more about what that is like?
Well, what do you mean by great sadness? The best example I can give you is when you go to a sad movie. I
Mhm.
mean, I went to a concert yesterday. Greatest tenor in the world, Jonas Kaufmann, was singing German Lieder. Not only was it exquisitely beautiful, but some of the songs were poignant, and there were people in tears around me. But there was ecstasy in the middle of the great depth of feeling. I noticed this is going back, God, what, 30, 40 years now. The Bette Midler movie, Beaches. I love that movie. It was so sappy. I love Bette Midler, first of all. She sings Wind Beneath My Wings. And then, I don't want to be a spoiler, but her best friend dies of cancer in the movie. It's so sad. And you come out in the lobby and everybody's going, oh, such a good movie. No,
Which movie is this?
It's called
movie?
Beaches, Beaches.
Okay, thanks.
Stars
Sorry,
Bette
Gilman.
Midler. It's a great film. Great film. If you like Bette Midler, you know, she's such a great singer. She's a good actress too. But anyway, the whole point is yoga does not mean that we no longer have the range of feelings. But for the yogi, it's different. Because at a very deep level, there's a place that's never touched. And there's this deep, deep intuitive knowledge that it's all okay, just the way it is. Now, for example, my friend who's out on the drug relapse, I don't know what God has in store for him. I don't know what karmically his lesson is, why he needs to suffer so deeply. But I'm not in charge. All I can do is love him, hand him tools, be there, not walk away from his suffering either. But I don't, or I'm useless. Now his partner runs over there, tries to help him through the psychosis. I'll save you. Well, now I gotta make sure that guy gets to an Al-Anon meeting, you know? All his attempt to rescue his partner has done is drag him down. Hasn't changed the drug addict. So that kind of attached and matched engagement with the suffering of others, in many ways, can be very self-indulgent and selfish. I can remember it was some just horrible thing that the Trump administration did, and women made a ring around the park, and they were all holding hands, solidarity. I think it's a great thing. But I don't think it does nearly as much as perhaps writing a check. You know, giving some money to Planned Parenthood or something like that. Writing a congressperson. So we always want to make sure that what we're doing is not something that I'm doing to make me feel better. Be solution oriented. That's one of my personal mantras. Set my feelings aside, be solution oriented.
Jim, I also feel that some sometimes we choose to feel bad, at least in my case, I think that's true, that sometimes we choose to feel bad because it helps us keep the narrative going. The narrative of my personality, I'm such a good, caring person, that sort of a thing.
Yes, yes, I think you're absolutely right, Shweta. Now, I had a fabulous insight. This is years ago. As many of you know, I have macular degeneration, so I haven't seen my toes in 21 years. So I used to go get a manicure and a pedicure up the street. And one time I was there, and the young lady who was working on my toes had this instrument. It was a little metal thing that kind of had a spade tip. She was working on the cuticle of the big toe on my right foot, and she jabbed it, and it hurt so bad and started to bleed. And she was horrified. So she holds up her hand and takes the little poker thing and stabs herself. I don't know if that was cultural. I don't know what it was. It's crazy. Didn't make my toe feel any better. Not a bit. She was punishing herself as a way to try to deal with her own shame or guilt. That's not a solution. That's self-centeredness. So listen very carefully. After the fact, shame and guilt and the ego, devolving into self-abuse does nothing. But how did you frame it, Shweta? I like that. It continues the narrative that somehow
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess what I find more, though, at least in my personal experience, is that more people seem like they just kind of emotionally shut down because they can't stand the suffering in the world. So, and I feel like there's also like a tendency, I don't want to say like spiritual bypassing, but there's a tendency to be like, oh, I'm in serenity or I'm, detached, but really it's disassociated. You know what I mean? Because yes, I agree that there is that personal narrative going on of like, I feel like I'm a good person, but I think it's also that,
I think we're overwhelmed by the suffering in the world and we ignore it. You're absolutely right. Now, let me tell you something about being a yogi. The emptier you become as a yogi, the more you thin out egoism. Unless you go sit on top of a mountain, you will experience the thoughts and feelings of others as if they were your own. I tell you, I feel your suffering. Very aware of your suffering. I feel it very, very intensely. And I care. So the yogi is not hard-hearted in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it is her nature to endeavor to remove the suffering of others. All right, very good discussion.
Okay.
I don't know if this is useful, Fang.
Yeah, it is, Jim. There was one other thing I was going to say, but I'm happy to save it for another
Go
time.
ahead.
What I was saying is, I feel like after a year and a half of going to your classes, what's happening a little bit now is that I feel like I see the world a little bit more clearly. I've let go of a lot of judgments.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, very happy about that. And what I sometimes see is it's much more, sometimes it's still hard for me to be very objective with my own subjective experiences. But sometimes when I see other people in conflict or where certain drama happens, I can kind of more clearly see what is going on. And to me, sometimes it feels like as if it's just like a funny play, not in a, like a condescending sort of way, but just kind of like I can see that they're maybe like paranoid or fearful about something that's just not real. you know, because I've gone through similar experiences. And so maybe what I wonder is maybe as we sort of continue going down this path, we can more and more get to kind of what you mentioned. Like, I really like your example of how, when I asked about the peace of mind and sadness at the same time, you said it was like going to a sad movie or listening to like a sad symphony. You can still feel the emotions, but you know to some degree that it's not real, not in the ultimate sense of it. And I see
And
that in some instances, but not fully at this point, especially when it comes to my own particular life. But now in other people's circumstances, I can feel like sometimes I see a little bit more objectively.
yes, now listen very carefully. Krishna says in the Gita, we do not unsettle the minds of the ignorant with the truth. Meaning here, when someone is not prepared for the truth, we don't beat them over the head with a Vedanta. If you've got a friend at work and a relative dies, you know there's no death. You may want to check out on the inner planes. Okay, are they earthbound? No, they're okay, you know. But what do you do with your friend? Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I bring you something to eat tonight? Do you want me to come over? You act your part in the drama of life.
Yes.
You
Agreed.
do not say, oh, 11th chapter of Gita, how does it go? I'm having a mental block. With the wise grieve neither. Oh, you grieve for whom you should not grieve, though you speak words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. You don't beat people up with that. That's cruel.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm not.
Yeah, but you know, always we do our own yoga. And the other thing I want to recommend for you, Fang, stay away from hypotheticals. Deal with your own real life issues, or if you have a friend, deal with something that actually is happening and going on. I can answer those questions better because it's not the same answer for the same person with even similar issues.
Okay.
All right, we need to quit. Good night. Thank you all.
Thanks, Jim. Have a good night.